Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf for another Sunday Recent Reads video. And the first book I want to talk to you about is Patricia of Grace, Chappy, first published in 2015. Now, Patricia Grace was born in 1937, so she is of age. She was born in New Zealand. She's Maori, and she writes novels, but also children's books. And I had never heard of her, which is a shame doubly because, first of all, she is one of the most acclaimed Maori authors in New Zealand, and second of all, being a huge fan of the All Blacks and rugby, I should have done more, effort to look into New Zealand authors. But anyway, there you go. So Chappy is set in New Zealand within the Maori culture for the biggest part of the novel, and it starts with Daniel, a 21-year-old young man who lives in Europe, but who is from a New Zealand Maori descent, and he's sent by his parents because he doesn't know what to do with his life, so he's sent by his parents to New Zealand to live with his grandmother Orivia. And then the book develops Orivia telling Daniel about her life and about her past, about her marriage to a Japanese refugee who is called Chappy, the title character of the book. So we learn about the Maori culture, but we also learn about immigration, what it means to feel at home in a different country, what the difficulties were when, because it's all set, the love story between Daniel's grandmother and the Japanese refugees around the Second World War. So at one point, Chappy goes back to Japan. And it's beautifully written. It's very engaging. I had a little bit of difficulty in the beginning because there are so many characters with, for me as a stupid Western European reader, many names that are unfamiliar to me. But just go with the flow, read on, and I'm sure you will be you will find the story very engaging, especially if you are interested in Maori culture. And I read this book for one of the Goodreads book clubs I'm a member of, and I mentioned this book club many, many times before. It's from Mel, who has a booktube channel, wonderful channel, Mel's Bookland Adventures, and the book club is called Read Around the World Book Club, where we read a book by a female author from a different country each month. And even if you don't want to join the group, just if you're interested in expanding your reading horizon, in discovering authors and novels from countries you probably never heard, I mean, you've heard of the country, but you haven't heard of the author, just check out the group and see, the reading list, and I'm sure you will find great recommendations. The second book I want to talk to you about is a recent release, Leni Zuma's Red Clocks. It was released earlier this year. Rainey Zumas is an American writer. She teaches writing at Portland in Oregon, and her novel Red Clocks is set in Oregon in a fictitious small fisher town in a dystopian future. So this novel has been compared, to The Handmaid's Tale and The Power by Naomi Alderman. But I don't think that this gives quite the right idea about this novel. Yes, there is a dystopian setting in the sense that we live in the United States, where abortion is once again illegal, in vitro fertilization is illegal, you can't adopt if you are a single parent. So there is this premise, but the book is really focusing on the lives of four women plus a fictitious character that one of the women writes about. So you have the biographer. The women are referred to by their either occupation or by their main placement in the novel. Excuse me. So you have Roberta, the biographer, 40-something single woman who wants to get pregnant. Then you have Mattie, a 15-year-old girl who has her first boyfriend and has sex and gets pregnant. You have Roberta's friend Susan, a wife with 2 small children who is in a very unhappy marriage. And then you have Jin Percival, who is referred to as the mender. She's a recluse. She lives outside the village in the woods, and is a healer. So she gives herbs and other medical treatment to women who come to her. And then the fifth woman is the woman that Roberta, the biographer, writes about, an fictitious Icelandic explorer from a couple of centuries ago. And like I said, the dystopian setting is the premise, yes, but the book centers around the lives of these 4+1 women. And it's a very quiet, introspective book where you learn about the difficulties and the struggles these women have, which you could have set, also for instance, in the 50s, where abortion was illegal and where you didn't have in vitro fertilization. So it's not, the focus is not the dystopian setting. The focus is the lives of these women and the struggles they have with an unwanted pregnancy, with a pregnancy that is not happening, with the fact that you are living outside of society like Jin, or that you are in an unhappy marriage and you don't know your way out because you have 2 small children. I really enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the language very much and the way we really get a close look at those characters and we understand them. And I also thought, that I'm a plot-driven reader, if you're following me for any length of time. I also thought the way that the lives of these women are intertwined, which we learn how they are connected through the novel. I thought that was really well done. So even if you're not into sci-fi or dystopian novels, or if you're fed up with all this rehash of, The Power and The Handmaid's Tale, I think you will like this book if you're interested in the topic of women's lives in certain stages, struggling with a certain problem. The next book I want to talk to you about is sci-fi, and a modern classic at that, and that's Octavia Butler's Kindred, first published in 1979. Octavia Butler, if you're following me, you know how much I love her work, especially the Xenogenesis series, 3 books set in the future where the humans meet aliens for the first time and how they interact and what that means. I thought this trilogy was brilliant. If you've never read it, the first book is called Dawn. Please give it a try. It's just absolutely fantastic. Octavia Butler was one of the few African-American women who made it in sci-fi, well known for their work. She won the Nebula and the Hugo, and she passed away in 2006. So Kindred is one of her earlier novels. It's set in 1976 in Los Angeles, and the main character is Dana, African-American woman, 26 years old, who just moved in with her white husband, Kevin. And then all of a sudden, she has these dizzy spells and she falls over and she is transported back in time to 1815 Maryland, where she saves a boy who is drowning in a river. The boy is called Rufus. And when she is threatened by the boy's father, she is transported back to the now, at least the now, her now, so 1976. And this happens a couple of times. So she goes back and forth in time. At the beginning, she stays only a couple of minutes in the past, and then she stays longer. At one point, she takes her husband with her, Kevin, and that causes all kind of troubles. And we see Rufus, who is the son of a slaveholder. So the setting in Maryland is a plantation, growing up. And we also learn that there is some connection between this white boy, this slaveholder's son, and Dana's ancestry. And there's a reason why she has to save him over and over again. The parts in the past are bigger in the book than the present. and you learn a lot. Those were the parts that I really thought were well done, and Octavia Butler can write, so no question about that. But the parts in the past where you learn about slavery, or the life on the plantation, from the view of somebody who lives in the future, I think were really well done and interesting. But sadly, I have to say, as a whole, I thought the book was just not very good. It pains me to say. This whole time travel thing was a gimmick in order, to write about 1815 and later, as the book develops, in Maryland, when they were still slaves. There's never any explanation how the time travel happens and why. Why you learn, because obviously she has to save Rufus, but that's it. So it stays sort of a gimmick, and I don't like that. If I have this idea that the author wants to tell a certain story, but he or she doesn't know how, and then she comes up with this gimmick of time travel, I just didn't like it. And I thought the character of Dana being thrown back into the past was just not very believable. I mean, she was hardly surprised. There was no shock. She just, was transported back the first time she saw this boy. She saved him, and she was transported back into the present. No, it didn't gel with me. The character of Dana didn't gel with me. The way this whole time travel thing was handled didn't gel with me. The way the present was handled, no, I'm sorry, I just didn't think the structure of the book was very well done. And despite the really good writing and the very interesting parts in the past, set in the past, so in Maryland, on this plantation, the book didn't convince me. I'm very sorry. And the last book I want to talk to you about is Rachel Kadish, The Weight of Ink, published in 2017. Rachel Kadish is an American author who published nonfiction and novels before, and her latest book, The Weight of Ink, is set in two timelines. We are in London in the present day, that is to say in the early 21st century, and we are in London in the 1660s. In the present, the main character is a professor of Jewish history, Helen Watts, and her assistant, Aaron. And in a country house outside of London, the family who lives there discover old documents, and Helen is brought in to examine the documents, to transcribe them, and to make sense of them. And those documents are from the 1660s, and we learn, of course, that they are connected with the story set in the 1660s, where we follow Esther Velasquez, a young Jewish girl, a refugee, who lives in London with a rabbi who is blind, and she, which is very unusual for that time, she writes for him. So she is a scribe, she writes his letters, she writes his thoughts. So we follow the part in the present where Helen and Aaron try to make sense of the documents and try to figure out who wrote them. And we follow Esther's life mainly in the past. I really enjoyed the book. It's a fast-paced, quick read. If you have read Geraldine Brooks' book, The People of the Book, then this is the book for you. It's sort of mixture of historical fiction and present, and I especially liked the way you could see the difference between how people from the present look at something in the past and what they make of it and what actually happened. I have to say, it's not the book where the writing overwhelmed me in any sense. At times I even thought it was a bit clunky, but that didn't diminish my joy, because I just liked the plot and the way I learned something about 1660 London and the Jewish community. I enjoyed it. So if you're into this kind of historical fiction, I'm sure you will enjoy it too. So this was it for my Sunday recent reads. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments whether you read any of the books or whether there are any other books you recently read that you want to talk to me about. And I'll see you all soon in my next video. Bye-bye.